Five, four, three, two, one.
All systems go.
You're listening to Sudbury News Talk.
I want to show you something.
Stand by.
On the morning shift.
Anything
Could happen.
Sudbury News Talk on the morning shift.
Well, good morning, Sudbury. Welcome to the morning shift. I'm AJ Walsh. Glad to be with you here today. CKLU 96.7 FM, cklu.ca, and on the Radio Player Canada app. So you can also stream us live at facebook.com/Sudbury News, youtube.com/Sudbury News. You can comment mainly on Facebook, I would believe. I'm going to check the comment section here again just to see if for some strange reason we're working today, and we might. Whoa, there's a sign, and yes, it is working for no particular reason whatsoever. The comments today are working. I did nothing different. I just did what I've always done, and so they're working today. Good morning, Lise. Glad to have you. Glad to have you up on the screen. And so I don't have to work as hard to monitor the comments on the other screen, which I really appreciate. This is a lot of things, right? Like a couple iPads, iPhone, computer, desktop monitor, 3 laptops, 3 mixers, all kinds of things going on. And then that's just the hardware. And then you have the software. You have to have an app that basically gets us attached to the CKLU studio to then broadcast it out there. That has to be working, and anything can happen with that. Anyways, our volumes, our sound, the sound in and of itself is a huge undertaking, let alone the video, let alone everything working together to make the whole broadcast happen. But we're thankful for you guys joining us today and each and every day. Make sure to like, share, subscribe, all that stuff. Good morning, Jen. Hope you're having a great one. Good morning, Shane. Cool. We're getting our comments up on the screen today, which I really, 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 really appreciate. So we got off to a little bit of a late start because just like the opening of the show says, anything can happen. That's exactly right. And that's what, again, this morning, things that have never happened in the history of the show. Each and every morning, that's what happens. Something that's never happened before. And luckily, the comments working is one of those things this morning. But when I go to have Billy's, who is our co-host this morning, when I go to just put him on full screen, the whole system shuts right down. And that has never happened before. I don't know why. It's just a mystery. And if anyone would know, it would be Billy. But we would have to troubleshoot that.
On full screen.
Yeah, right. Good morning, Billy. How are you doing today, man?
Great, thanks.
Yeah, good morning.
Super great.
Marco says that's Murphy's Law, and that is. Yeah, Murphy's Law is in full effect 100% of the time, all the time with this show. But you know what? It just seems to just help in some ways with problem solving and just kind of just keep moving forward, and if there's a problem, you just kind of deal with it and move on, and well. So that's what that's kind of taught me. Just like
The
Rush.
story of life.
Grace Under Pressure, right? From Rush. I used to love Rush for their kind of life lessons in their music and the lyrics. It was huge for me growing up. I'll never forget when someone turned me on to Rush. The first time I was like, oh my, this is amazing. And the person who was, I don't know if you've had this experience at all with your first time ever Rush experience. Somebody says, hey, come here. You're like, what? You got to listen to something. You're like, oh, okay. And they take you back then, to maybe their bedroom or a rec room or something. And out comes the vinyl, goes on the record player or whatever it was at the time. And you're like, no, don't say anything. They say, don't say anything. Just listen. Did you have any experience like that at
Oh
all?
yeah, that was the social norm growing up for me. But with Rush, it wasn't really the greatest first experience. I think looking at an album cover and thinking, "Whoa, this is going to be so cool," but it didn't sound like I thought it would, and I didn't
Okay.
realize the great wisdom they had in their lyrics till later in life.
Oh,
But
interesting.
yeah, I was
Huh.
always like a little bit thrown by, I don't know. I don't, guess I don't want to get into the details. Don't want to knock Geddy Lee's voice, but I just thought, you know, I was into the little bit more tougher sounding. I want to be tough, like
Yeah,
the
I know
Stones.
exactly what you mean. A lot of the Rolling Stones reviews, if you look at some of the documentaries on early Rush, they'll say he sounded like a cat that got his tail stuck in the door or stuff like that. You know what I mean? Just there was all kinds of really bad reviews on his voice, and a lot of people, don't relate to his voice and thought it was a woman for many, many years. Thought it was a woman singer because of his high pitch style or whatever, or high pitched voice. But I just want to say good morning to David joining us here this morning. Good morning. Yeah, a lot of us are on already. So we're talking about the problems we're having as this show usually starts with the latest problem. But a really cool thing, we got the comments going today, which is I'm just beside myself. I don't know how it happened, but it did. We
Yep.
can't, and we can't put Billy on full screen or else the whole show will be disconnected. So I don't know why that is. But
Technology giveth and it taketh away.
that's right. But we are going to move forward. There's lots to talk about. There's things with city politics that just keep on a coming. And the election, early voting starts tomorrow. So that's kind of interesting. There's news happening. We're going to cover the latest news that's been covered from your Sudbury Star, Sudbury.com, CTV Northern Ontario, CBC, Sudbury, things like that. Hey, morning, yes. We don't have a name associated. I didn't even know people could comment if they were. Oh, that was a Nick. It just comes up Facebook user. Good morning, Nick. I don't know why that is. That's weird. Usually you would come up. But maybe you have a multiple accounts or you're banned by Facebook in some way, shape, or form. I have no idea. I have no idea. But yeah, good morning, Nick. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for joining us, everyone. Let's get right to the show so we can cover the headlines, cover the news today, get to your comments, all that stuff. So first of all, let's just start off with a little bit of weather, and I'll try to remember not to put Billy on full screen, or else if I do and the show stops and you just hear dead air on CKLU, or the stream just stops, you'll know that I, by accident, clicked Billy's screen to go full screen by accident. Anyways, we'll be back with some weather right after this. Oh, and as usual, I knew I forgot something, and I did forget something. So, but that's fine. We'll be back and we'll be doing some weather here. I'll just maybe put my full screen here. Yeah, so that's the one thing in doing all the troubleshooting. I didn't share my my screen that I have to share in order to have one of the screens showing the weather. So it is what it is, but we just fixed it now. Here, you got it. Let's do it. And now we are ready for weather. 5 degrees currently, fog patches. We didn't get that extreme wind they were talking about yesterday. There was an Environment Canada warning issued for extreme wind up to 90 kilometers an hour plus, telling you to hunker down, tie down anything that's loose in your yard or anything, any projectiles, possible projectiles, blah, blah, blah. It did not happen. As far as I know, unless last night there was wind while I was sleeping and I wasn't aware of it, it seemed to pass us by, which I'm thankful for. I didn't need any wind damage to anything that I own or have anybody hurt by any projectiles. 5 degrees, fog patches. It is, well, that's interesting. So that happened. Okay, so here you go. Today, mainly cloudy, 60% chance of showers late this morning and this afternoon. Fog patches dissipating this morning. The wind will only be 20 kilometers an hour coming from the southwest. High of 11 today. The UV index will be 2 or low. Tonight, mainly cloudy, 40% chance of showers. Wind becoming southeast 20 kilometers, gusting up to 40. So that's way far from the 90 kilometers that they were forecasting. Long-term, long-range forecast. Friday, 60% chance of showers, high of 10. Saturday, 60% chance of showers, high of 7. Sunday, 40% chance of showers, high of 7. Monday, 40% chance of showers, only 3. Then forecasted for possible snow Tuesday and Wednesday. So it's getting colder, and the precipitation is turning into the white stuff early on this year. So hopefully that's not a sign of things to come with an early winter, and it's just we're going to have a bit of a warmer end of the before fall starts. But anyways, I'm just hoping here on the live stream, and that's all I can do. We'll be back with some headlines and some of the latest greatest in terms of our election as we get closer and closer to October 24th, right after this. Okay, and I don't know, Billy, if you had a chance to look over the stories shared on our Sudbury News Facebook page or not this morning.
I did have a chance to go through and take note of some points. We got a couple election stories. The Rocca Sorelli, a start to decentralization. And Kerwin says, beware election promises with unreal expectations.
I got to hand it to Robert Kerwin.
We could go on there.
Yeah, Robert Kerwin, just a PR machine for himself, writing all kinds of letters to the media. It's almost like a story every second day from Robert Kerwin. He's digging in his heels this election.
You got to be a good communicator to be in this game, right?
He's definitely. He never responded to our invitation to be on the show for some reason. I don't know why. Many people did, and we've just been trying to coordinate times to get on. I know Bob Johnston is chomping at the bit to get on, but he'll have to actually physically come in to the studio. So we'll have to make it on a day when everything's running from the actual studio, have him come by and sit in with us. So that's because I don't think the phone thing's going to really work too well for Bob.
Right. One thing that kind of jumped out at me, which I didn't realize existed, was there was a report. So this is going back to the a start to decentralization, which kind of an interesting word, because I guess there's the whole amalgamation thing, and it's not quite that, but as our amalgamated towns are shouting to be heard. They recognize that since the amalgamation, they have been neglected, and as a result, their sense of belonging to the greater city has diminished. And we talk about that quite a bit, but there was a report she brings up here that I guess surprisingly, our costs kind of went up for the services. I'm just trying to find that exact quote so I don't misquote it.
So that was from Miranda, correct?
From the Miranda, yeah, from Sudbury.com story.
Rocca Trucelli. There was an interesting thing. They put out 3 questions about a week ago, and for some reason she was missed. It said that she did not respond, and there was a kind of a thing about that. And she said no one reached out to her, and then there was a miscommunication. And so they republished the same story, the top 3 things that candidates think are important to the city. They just republished the story with her included. I was hoping
Okay.
they'd have a little bit of a story saying, "We're sorry, we apologize that something happened," but I don't know. Maybe it wasn't their fault. I have no idea.
Yeah.
I was just hoping for something like that.
Well, we know weird things can happen.
Yeah, I know who that is now. So Nick says, "Are we really surprised?" We were really talking about Nick's whatchamacallit. So she was saying that the city is very corrupt. So I guess I would think there's elements of corruption in any institution, I would think, or at least large institutions. There's probably a good chance that there's corruption in it, and I would not doubt that that is true from our city. I don't have any facts.
Well,
or
I
any,
think anytime you make a
support that.
bureaucracy kind of bigger,
Yeah.
you're going to have more kind of in between, more stuff's going to fall through the cracks. There's going to be, that's kind of just part and parcel with, and I guess it might be the flip side. Like, how could amalgamation make these things? Here's that blurb I was going to bring up, which is an audit conducted by KPMG for the province at the time. This was 2001. Estimated that an amalgamation would result in a $13 million annual savings. However, this was disproved in a report by the Northern Policy Institute in 2016, which demonstrated that the cost of all services increased after 2001. So amalgamation had the opposite effect, which seems kind of counterintuitive, but maybe that is the other side where kind of larger bureaucracy will kind of counter that.
So we were sold the idea that amalgamation would save on costs.
Exactly.
And then right after that, it was debunked and the proof was in the pudding that it actually cost us more.
According to those reports.
Interesting. Well, you know what? I'm not surprised at that at all because, anyways, centralization isn't always the answer. And I think if you're going to centralize, you have to keep in mind what are the downsides to centralization and preempt all of that and think of what are we going to do, because I think there are bonuses to centralization. Don't get me wrong, but I think there's also some not so good things either. And it needs to really be looked at. And I'm hoping that after this election, whoever is elected in can really look at this and get the best of both, to have some kind of quasi-hybrid, get services back to the communities they need to be in, the outlining communities, and not have to do it. Don't, be fiscally responsible about it. Come up with a way of maybe the money that's coming from those communities, maybe a percentage of it stays in the community, and that's it. You can't get any more from them. They are owed that 50% back or whatever the percentage is that makes sense, stays in the community. And then that's how it's a hybrid, because no matter what, guaranteed. That's what I love so much about the system that the United States had for many, many years. It's changing now. But I remember the first time I came to a toll road. Do you remember that at all, coming to a toll road for the first time going, this is weird. I have to pay to get onto a road. Did you experience that too?
I did, yeah.
And you go, why do I have to pay to get onto a road? In Canada, you don't have to pay to go on roads at that time.
Mm-hmm.
There was nothing like it. But then, someone explains to you, well, the reason for that is every dollar you put towards getting on that road is separate, and it goes to the maintenance and upkeep of that particular road you're on. So that means any driver who's on there contributes to the road. I thought, genius. That is genius. Now, in Canada, and now the States too, is starting to get this model where you just put all the money in a big giant slush fund, and from that, everyone just draws from it, and nobody is kind of accountable to what particular, who's putting in the money is actually getting return or whatever, right? So we just put all our money into big kitty, and it pays for our health care, pays for, government programs and things like that. And look, government programs have done very well, and a lot of people have benefited, including myself, from different government programs. I'm not knocking that model per se. but can we have transparency and money going into things as well as covering those who particularly miss out on? Because the argument is, what about the person who can't contribute? Do they go without? So you need to watch over them too and help them. And that is true. You do need to watch out for your fellow sojourner on this earth, so to speak. But at what expense? To lose 100% transparency and not know where any money is going and why, and and just who's in charge of it and who's responsible and who's accountable, So I think that a lot of people are concerned this election for things like that. But no surprise, it costs more for amalgamation.
Yeah, and that's the big thing. I think we kind of debate a lot on the idea of stuff. So we debate whether amalgamation saves money, and we sometimes go down these roads for a long way before we actually look at the data, and look at these reports and go, oh, wait a second, we've been having this sort of false debate because it's actually costing more money. It doesn't save, but and I think that's kind of the era that we're entering now. Is we want to see all the numbers, and I think that's what I like about Miranda is she's very into audits. Like let's get a clear idea of where the money's going and if it is saving money.
Exactly. A lot of comments coming in. I know Nick is sharing all kinds of things similar to what I've been sharing about accountability and all of that. And then Miles was saying the first toll road, not a bridge, was in Canada. It was in Nova Scotia. So the Nova Scotians brought in the first toll. But this is the problem that happened in Canada after they had this big slush fund and they're taking all the tax money. Then they bring in a toll on top of it. So not only are you being taxed to the hilt, then they go, oh yeah, okay, toll. We'll also charge you for the road. No. My tax dollars you're taking from me is supposed to pay for that road. You can't have it both ways. You can't be taking all my money and charge me for a toll. That's not what I was saying. I was saying just the toll, keep my taxes in my pocket and charge me accordingly. And then that Shane basically made a comment. Imagine if we can just pay for the services we want, kind of thing. And I thought, it's like our healthcare. How many times have I been to the hospital? Yeah. And again, like Julie's saying, it got too big to keep track of after a while. There's just a lot of money and we don't know, there's this, that, and the other. It's coming in, it's going out, and nobody really is keeping track. No one's on it. And journalists, like we talked yesterday, when Pierre was on the show, journalism has really taken a real hit because they used to be the watchdogs for things like this. And that's really been chipped away at over the years to the point where, government is the one funding these news organizations. That's where they get most of their money from. And so why would they go to bat for citizens when their money's coming from the government, where is the government getting the money from?
The PR for the government,
That's it.
I love that Pierre brought up manufacturing consent because you can really kind of see that from a 20,000 foot view now, especially looking at history where, there definitely seems to be some media complicity to, kind of help shape the agendas of government kind of thing.
Yeah. And then one of the commenters yesterday, and sorry, I forget your name at the moment, or who it was, they mentioned Noam Chomsky in that manufactured consent book, along with other ones. So I was like in between on my breaks yesterday, I was kind of doing a binge Noam Chomsky YouTube kind of, getting my fill. I agree with a lot of his things, but he thinks capitalism is the problem with it all. And that's where I kind of started to not really agree with. It's not just capitalism. What if a government that wasn't capitalist can do the very same things in a communist society or totalitarian regime? They could do the very same things of the tactics he's talking about, but he just blames the whole capitalist society and things like that, which I think can be a part of it and is. I just don't think it's the only thing. And I think we fall short when we just blame capitalism for everything, because it's not 100% true. So,
No. And I think a lot of people blame capitalism, but they're really meaning crony capitalism.
exactly, which I blame too. That's what I mean. That's
Yeah.
the portion of it that this is like the
Lack
city
of
here.
transparency capitalism, you know.
Exactly. When there's transparency, there's accountability. When there's accountability, there's less corruption. So, Rocket Churchelli talking about decentralization, a start to it anyways. So check out that story on Sudbury.com. You can link to it from our Facebook page. Robert Curran, beware election promises with unreal expectations. Well, I agree with him on that one, right on the headline. Anyways, I must say many of the promises are being made about candidates, so we go into that story a little bit more. And I don't like the new Facebook. It is just not cool. You got to, before I would just click on a story and it went to the story. Now it goes, are you sure you want to go to this story? It's like, oh my goodness, really? You put that in there? Like I wouldn't have clicked on it if I didn't want to go to the story. Well, because it's a business page.
Oh.
I guess they figure business owners might not be sure or not. If they click on something, they have to oh, I'm a business owner. I guess I clicked wrongly. I didn't realize I needed to click. Oh, no, I want to go back. It's like, what? I clicked on it. Go to the story, for crying out loud. Anyways, all kinds of weird
like
things.
Big brother holding your hand through your experience here.
Exactly. I must say that many of the promises that are being bandied about by candidates who are trying to convince voters to replace incumbents have never been so outrageous, nor have they been so insulting to the current council and municipal staff. I know I chuckle a bit at the end there, and I shouldn't have, but he's really hitting home that whole idea of why would you vote for someone who hasn't done this before? And that to me is just a stale kind of argument. It's because maybe you did a bad job. Just because you did it before, maybe people feel you did a bad job, even if you didn't. That's the consensus. That's what I'm hearing from everybody. They don't like what's been going on. So he keeps coming out and beating this drum of, all these other people, and they're insulting me and they're insulting the staff because we did a really good job and they don't understand. I mean, that's not going to get you reelected. It's just a tip for you as a PR kind of angle. That is not going to get you reelected. So I appreciate where you're coming from. There's some truth to it.
That, that's got to be sort of brought forward, and which is, like right now there is that definitely. I'm sure they're taking a lot of slings and arrows for, and I personally haven't been paying attention long enough to know, anything really about Kerwin, like, what he's done or not done. But, I think that side of it needs to be spoken about too, that there is, that to be considered.
Yeah, 100%.
Game is,
But make the point once and move on to other points. Like that's pretty much his only point he's making is that.
Yeah, well, that's media, right? Repetition is the key.
Well, no, again, right? Okay, this is his strategy. There's no doubt about it. And it is our strategy, and we will see how it ends up, right? So that's what it is. We'll see if that strategy works. Miles is saying the problem with big government, capitalism sometimes gets mixed in with totalitarianism. You are right. That is exactly right. Wrongly, of course. Yes, that's true. Not in a good way. And then Julie's saying Kerwin is a career chronic victim. LOL. And that is true. That's a bit of an angle here is the victim. Why are you being so harsh on me? These people are saying hurtful things. And he whines more than my toddlers. So again, right? And again, this is just people talking. The very thing council voted to stop on their Facebook pages was their constituents speaking to them on social media because maybe some of these things weren't nice. They didn't like to hear that maybe their constituents thought they might not be doing a good job or doing the right thing. So they voted for whatever reason to make the counselors accountable for anything anyone says on their Facebook page, which means someone can get on there and say the strangest of things, and they hold the counselor or the mayor or the city employee responsible for that person's comments, which, my goodness, where's the common sense in that? And I think that's where policies in Facebook are going, period. I think they're going to hold anyone accountable for any of the comments on their channels or their pages. And I think that's what's going to shut down the whole idea that people can share their opinions with others. And I think City Council just preempted that. Just need to get the old boys out, put new people. So again, these are would-be voters speaking. That's not me. The victim playbook, popular politics these days. That's Miles. Well, again, yeah, the victim. It is a thing. We need to be aware of these kind of tactics, right? So instead of really talking about the facts of what's been done, and again, we can look into the records of these councillors and mayors to see what they voted on. Go back, peruse the city website, dig in, do all that stuff. So the other problem is the candidates for mayor and or councillor positions will often say whenever they can, if they think of it, will help them get elected. Yes, that's what politicians do. They say whatever they can to help them get elected. And hopefully the people are able to see a candidate who speaks truth and doesn't have a history of lying and has, as little skeletons as possible in their closets and is more aligned with their own values and morals and ethics and things that they feel that person would represent them the best in that particular position. So yes, they do. So that's up to the people. So he's getting on others to what they're talking about. As Councillor Ward 5 for the past 8 years, I must say that many of the promises that are being bandied about by candidates who are trying to convince voters to replace incumbents have never been so outrageous, nor have they been so insulting to the current council and municipal staff. We did say that earlier. We know we have challenges dealing with the homeless, mental health, and drug addiction. Yeah. And you had 8 years. That's what people are. No, I preempted it. So, right. So my mind goes right to what I'm hearing people say or what my where I would go naturally if I hear something like that. I don't know, Billy. So we know we have challenges dealing with homeless, mental health, and drug addiction. So someone who's been there 8 years, what comes to your mind when you read that?
Well, it hasn't been a problem like it is now for, I would say, the last 3 years have been, really exacerbated. So, I don't think you could look back and say, oh, you didn't deal with this 8 years ago. But again, my experience, and it's kind of interesting, you ever been in a restaurant and you see a toddler has dropped his toy and the parent's not doing anything, and you're like, what is going on? This toddler is screaming and it's making, ruin this experience, and the parent's just going on about their, and you're just, oh, what a jerk parent that is, and then a year later, I'm babysitting a little toddler nephew, and they're dropping their toy and they're dropping their toy and they're dropping their toy. And then I'm picking it up. And then he looks me in the eye and he drops it with a gleam in his eye. And it's like, oh, I know what's going on here. And then I have to sit there and be that person in the restaurant that everybody's staring at going, why is he not picking up the toy for the toddler? Yep. Sometimes there's just like, you get a perception of things and it looks as clear as day, but there's a lot more under the hood.
Yeah, I love that. Billy, I can always count on you to give another perspective. It's like, you can't really see much unless you've been in the shoes, which we really appreciate. And I love your analogy of the toddler, because anyone who's had them or been around toddlers knows that gleam in the eye when they're holding, it's like the mic drop's about to happen. I'm going to drop this and you're going to pick it up. Love it. So we have We know we have challenges maintaining and replacing our infrastructure such as roads, water, wastewater, and municipal facilities. We know we have challenges providing services that our older adults need in order to be able to age in place in their homes. We know we have challenges attracting new business development and workers to meet our labor shortages. We know we have challenges with availability of affordable housing as well as affordable rental housing. We know we have challenges providing a level of safety on our roads and in our neighborhoods, and demands from some for more police services, while others demand that we defund the police and put more money into social services. So it seems like he has somewhat a finger on some of the main, topics that people are concerned about in the city, right? Yeah, Natalie likes your perspective, Billy. Obviously, it's a very true statement.
Thank you, Julia.
And that's true. And you always have, even if you agree, like you might even be sitting there agreeing with what I'm saying too.
Oh,
you
totally.
You have the ability to like see it from the other perspective, which is really great for this particular format as well, and that's what I love, because we, sometimes we get in an echo chamber, and that's not healthy as well. We need to see things from all perspectives. And sometimes I just feel, I guess, a little liberty to kind of go out and share a little bit of my, my perspective as well. And I try and sum
I
up,
share that perspective
for sure.
like pretty wholeheartedly, like most of the time. And again, I like to bring up a little bit of the other side, because I'm a little bit well, it just keeps a little more balance, I guess.
And no, and the thing is, you could also see the other side as well, because there can be two things that are true. You can have someone who's been in council and just wasn't able to deal with these things, maybe tried, but didn't get the results, and then is now being held to task. And then people wanting the change and needing the change and wanting to do something to have the change. They're both kind of true, at the same time. But what's going to win out? The counselor who was in there for the last 8 years, who knows all the problems, who says, that they are going to deal with it. And then, or someone saying, well, you've had 8 years to deal with it. We need someone who's going to actually do something. But maybe something still won't be done if you put someone new in. They might encounter the same problems that the previous counselor encountered, right? So, what, don't we see that more times than not in politics?
And this is the way to kind of like whittle down to the actual kind of root of the problem, is to just, explore these ideas and try and figure it out, and as a society we'll observe and we'll try stuff. And it's like that hockey team kind of analogy where, maybe it wasn't the coach's fault that they lost, but sometimes changing the coach is going to change the energy. And
it's not necessarily the coach's fault, but it seems to bring positive change regardless, even if it wasn't necessarily the coach's fault. Cindy says, I agree with most of the things stated at the mayor debates would cost millions more in spending. A few stated that they would support cutting the police budget by 10%, which would mean laying off 40 officers. Which I didn't. Wow, 10% would equate to 40 officers. That's interesting. Makes no sense at all. Most agreed that they would cut the city emissions by 25% in 3 years. Not even possible financially. They would house everybody by 2025. That's a huge promise. That would mean hundreds of new units each year for 3 years, just to clear our waiting list at Sudbury Housing and the homelessness. Going to be hard to keep the promise of controlling tax increases and promise big spending at the same time. They can start with canceling the Junction project and putting the $100 million into housing. So that's from Cindy. And then Carol says, we need a change. Why are so many Sudburyans unhappy? And Alan said, because Sudbury is a stagnant crap hole. And it's been that way for 30 years while smaller cities like North Bay and the Sioux continue to move forward. And then obviously Carol comes back. I'm proud. So I'm going to get into a conversation. Obviously proud Siberian. I never refer to it with that kind of language, obviously. So here's some self-moderation. I think Julia might have made the point that Facebook wants us to police ourselves, which is true, right? So you see a little bit of that here, like watch your language, which is, I guess, fair, and I appreciate that too. Then why do you think we need change if you're a proud Siberian? That makes no sense. And why do you think so many people are unhappy? Oh, these are good questions though, right? I can still be a proud Siberian and still be unhappy with my situation in the city. I am. I think by and large that there's things I am happy about and there's things I'm unhappy about. I really do. And I think that's fine. I think that's normal. I think we can be happy about some things and know some things need, changes. Roads, for crying out loud, give me a break. Potholes for so many years. How many damaged cars did we have? What the heck? Like, you would think making roads drivable for cars would be just a basic thing that you'd be able to have in a city you pay enormous taxes for, municipally, provincially, federally. To live in Canada, in Ontario, and in our city, you should just be able to drive on smooth roads, I would think would be one of the basic things that you'd have. Basic infrastructure.
Possibly, but if there was a place on Earth where that would be a problem, it would be Sudbury, because apparently we have an insane amount of roads per population. And to add to that, it's a mining community, so we have a lot of big trucks on a lot of these roads. And then you add in all the climate, weather issues and things. So, it's not, we're definitely at a disadvantage compared to a lot of other cities in that regard. Yeah.
And again, I apologize for those who heard me talk about this before, but there was an expert on CBC one time and they were interviewing him and he was from a university and he's an expert in northern roads, per se. And he's talking about some of these places way up north, way colder than ours, way bigger trucks, way more mining. Maybe not residential traffic as much, wasn't as populated, but more mining trucks than even we have, and heavier and colder and more climate, and their roads last for 30 years and are smooth. And he said there's basic ways to do this, and you have to hold the people accountable who make the roads. And basically when they make them, they give a guarantee. They're warranted to last for 15 years, let's say. And anything that happens to that road, it's up to the company, not taxpayers, to fix that problem. You're darn tootin' they're going to make sure that road is done right. Again, this accountability thing.
Yeah.
And the guy talking was just, he wasn't aware that Sudbury had crappy roads. But the interviewer was basically talking like, well, we have cold weather and we have 4 seasons and we have mining. Yeah. And he goes, no, says that's not an excuse. You should have good roads given all those factors. And then he explained how. He said, you got to dig down. Maybe he said the frost line or something. You got to dig down so deep. And then you have to add this certain kind of gravel. And then you got to have that layer and that many and this and that. And he just explained the process of making a road that lasts more than 3 years, which our roads only last for.
Yeah,
historically.
And you can see a lot of, planned obsolescence is sort of built into the business model of a lot of the economy. And I think that's, probably no exception with roads.
Yeah, exactly. And Julia is saying basically what's going through my mind, the things we love about Sudbury, we're all 5-minute drive, 10-minute drive from going swimming or going for a hike or, going hunting or fishing or any of these things, nature, things that, like she says, are untouched by bureaucracy or little less. And we just enjoy those things about Sudbury for sure. Miles, it was also poor pavement watered down by used oil. Yeah, I remember that came out in the news a while back. They were cutting corners. And I'm sure that's not the only thing they were doing to cut corners was just the used oil. I'm sure there's all kinds of things they were doing. And it basically was a racket. I think to Nick's point, if there is going to be corruption, there's corruption in construction usually. If you look at Montreal as the, historically, been called out, the construction industry in Montreal is very, very corrupt. And so that's the people that build our whatever infrastructure and things like that aren't city workers. It's contracted out. There's a lot of room for corruption there. The city needs to get more money from the mining companies. That's exactly right, to help with the roads. If they are indeed, and they want to use that excuse that the roads are bad because the mining companies, get them to pave the roads or chip in or do something, right? All right. Ask Kerwin how to build Sudbury roads. That's funny. So this is something that a local author was writing a book. Sudbury author sounds warning about coming technology in new sci-fi novel. And he used to be a media personality too. There's the Facebook. You're going to a link outside of Facebook. Do you want to follow the link? Are you sure you want to follow this link? Yeah, I'm sure. Thank you. Okay. So here's the picture of the novel. Augment Nation. Sudbury author Scott Overton offers a cautionary story with his new science fiction novel, Augment Nation, released this week. The augments referred to in the title are brain-computer interfaces, or BCI, small computerized devices that directly link our brains to powerful processors and even the internet. Come on, as if that's possible.
Pretty big topic these days. I like cautionary tales.
I say that, I'm joking, by the way, because that's all I took in my last year of university, basically in communications, was where technology is, and that is already there. They're already using this technology. That's direction Overton sees consumer technology going within the next 2 decades, or maybe the next 5 years. And he believes
Here.
What's that?
It's already here.
Yeah, it's already here. They're already using it, right? It's just a matter of implementing it. No pun intended. Or implanting it. Implementing and planting. And he believes we'll need to be prepared. How do you prepare for something like that? That's what I want to say. An augment nation.
Cautionary tales.
That's right. The lead character has had a brain-computer interface implanted beneath his skull since the age of 14 to correct a neurological disorder. Yeah, because here's the good thing, right? Amalgamation is going to save money. It's going to do all these great things. And then you do it and you realize, oh, maybe there's a nefarious other thing that could happen. So it does good things. It helps him with his neurological disorder. As a teenager, it branded him as an outcast, but as an adult, it endows him with extraordinary abilities. He may represent the next step in human evolution. Yeah, did you know that they consider that hardware? The chip is hardware and software. The chip itself, the physical elements of the chip, is hardware. What's inside of it, what it does, is software, and how it links to whatever. But when you put it inside a body, our bodies are considered, it's called scientifically wetware. So we are already labeled wetware. So you have software, hardware, wetware, and nothing to do with kitchenware. That's totally different. Or Tupperware. When computerized brain augments replace smartphones as the must-have status item, mega corporations and governments conspire together, and marketing becomes mind control. The lead character is uniquely equipped to lead a worldwide resistance, but the fight may cost him everything. Wow, that's a really great. It's got me totally wanting to read this book. Maybe it'll be made into a movie. Will Smith. I picture Will Smith as the lead character here. I don't know about you.
Is that because iRobot?
Well, yeah. And the other one there where he's the last guy on Earth, him and his dog or whatever. and there's zombies everywhere because of some virus that took over everybody. And he's like, there's just a small community of people, but they're all throughout the world. And he's alone in New York City or something with all these zombies. Water treatment plant reducing fluoride to parts of Greater Sudbury. Public Health Sudbury and Districts advises people to use fluoridated toothpaste until they're able to get the fluoride back in the water. So, Billy, what do you have to say about that?
Fluoride, yeah,
You know-
no, I think I had too much already in my life.
This is what I'm going to say, which I do know is factual, which I do know I've studied, that there's not one study that proves that fluoride is good for your teeth. Take that to the bank. So you can go on Google now and look up a study that proves that fluoride has some kind of link to teeth that are going to be in a better situation if you take fluoride. That's weird when you think of it, because that's what other reason would there be for fluoride?
I think it's the only thing. It's the only mass medication that they do, and typically mass medication is like, not looked on as a good idea because it's you're not really controlling the dose for people. It's all just, but yeah. And it's not like fluoride's a very, especially the stuff they use. What is it? Hydrofluoric acid or something. It's not an innocuous substance. It'll burn right through concrete. I'm pretty sure it's some pretty nasty stuff.
So it is toxic waste. It's a byproduct.
That's an interesting story how it became used in cities too.
Yeah.
Because before that, apparently they had to go through all these, special containers to bury it and stuff. But as soon as you sell it as a medication, it goes under a different category, and you can just dump it in the water supply instead.
Yeah. Similar
Saves
to
tons of money.
That's right. Similar to Coca-Cola, I heard it had to be transported similarly, the syrup for Coca-Cola. Anyways, but just do your own research on it. Look, it is what it is. Truth is truth. Facts are facts. You can look at the studies if you want. Don't just take people's word for it. That's the great thing. Before we get those brain implants, you don't have a brain implant yet. You can just kind of use that. Go on, do your own research. But thanks, Jerome, for letting me know the name of that movie was Legion with Will Smith when he was all by himself there. Sudbury, let's see here. I treat Sudbury water to suppress both chlorine and fluoride.
Yeah, that's the way to do it.
Yep.
Yeah,
There is chlorine. Yeah, chlorine in the water and fluoride in the water. Just do your research on chlorine, drinking it, what it could do while you drink it, and fluoride, what it could do. Just do if you're concerned. Maybe you're not, and it's fine. Hey, you don't have to be. I'm just letting you know, hey, if you haven't thought of it, just look into it. And speaking of the mayor, speaking of the election coming up, there was a person running for mayor before who that was on their platform. They wanted to get rid of the fluoride in the water. And I know other communities have done it as well. So there's a reason why they would have done it, right? So bought and paid for science, Jerome says. So I have to leave it at that. Unfortunately, sometimes we end with these huge topics. But thanks for listening, watching, everyone. Make sure to like, subscribe, share, all that stuff. We really appreciate you. We appreciate your comments. We appreciate the platforms allowing us to be on here. And I appreciate you, Billy, for being on today. Thank you very much. Thanks, everyone. Stay tuned now for Earshot Daily on CKLU. We'll be back. Same time, same place tomorrow. I believe Nick will be on the show, so we look forward to that as well. Have a great one, everyone. Ciao.
This is Sudbury News Talk on the morning shift.